All right, good afternoon, everybody. We'll go ahead and use the raise your hand function for questions today for Associate Head Coach Mike Schwartz. And it's working, fantastic. All right, we'll start with Grant Ramey, Ryan Schumpert, then Jimmy Himes.
Mike, when you think back to that Kansas game last year, what sticks out about that? And obviously Eve had a really good game that day. Do you think these last couple of games kind of getting back to where he was last year?
You hope so, Grant. I mean, obviously it's great to get back in a rhythm and to have two games where, defensively he's been pretty consistent all season long, but to have two games where offensively he's had some confidence out there. He's taken the shots that we want him to take. He shot it with aggression. He's driven the ball well. He's finished around the basket and played above the rim, which Coach Barnes and the staff has really challenged him to do, to use his athleticism on offense, and he's done so the last two games. So obviously that's a real positive for our team. In terms of the game last year, when you think back to it, you think about what an incredible atmosphere, what an incredible game it was. And with a minute and a half left in the game, it was a 3 or 4 point game, and we had a costly turnover. I believe we were down 4. We got an offensive rebound on a big possession and turned it over. So, the game got off to a defensive start on both teams. It was slow to start. Both teams were defending really well. Kansas took a lead. We stormed back and we took a lead, and we think we were up 6 or 7, and they went on a 7-8-0 run, took it into halftime. We're up a couple possessions at halftime, extended their lead in the beginning of the second half, and we fought back and got it within to a possession game. So obviously exciting that they're coming in here, and it was a heck of a game last year, and we're going to need to do the job in the paint and on the boards because that's where they really hurt us last year. And even though big fella Azubuike is not there, McCormick is equally as good and equally as challenging for us to be able to defend and rebound in the paint.
It's the third straight season you guys have played Kansas, and obviously Coach Barnes coached against Coach Self a lot when he was at Texas. With the familiarity there, does it almost feel kind of like a conference game and everyone knowing what each team wants to do and wants to get into in the half court?
Yeah, it's a good point. I guess more so than a typical non-conference game, you could say that with Kansas just because of some of the familiarity of the last 2 seasons, as well as Coach Barnes and Coach Self going way back to the Big 12. So, yeah, that's a good point. And then you just add the style of play of both teams, physical, inside-out teams. They want to play inside out, and they're shooting the ball really well, but it's coming from the paint first. We want to play inside out. We may not be shooting it quite as well right now, but we know we want to get the ball in the paint. So anytime you add that, there's going to be that element of a physical game, and that's what they were like in the Big 12, and that's what they've been like the last 2 years as well.
Mike, Eve Pons is on the National Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year list. And I wonder, do you think he's a better defender than he was last year? And if so, why?
Yeah, Jimmy, that's a good point. And yes, we do think he's a better defender. I think it's no different than a player on offense as they grow from year to year, as they go from their freshman, sophomore, junior, and, senior year. He's done the same thing. He's really enhanced his communication out there on the perimeter. He needs to talk a whole lot more, and Coach Barnes and the whole staff and the team have challenged him to do so. We need him to have more vocal presence with this team in the locker room and on the court. But one thing he has done, he's always taken a lot of pride in his defense, his one-on-one defense. Obviously, his shot blocking. There's not much to say about that. But what he's taken a great amount of pride in this year is helping the other guys try and be on the same page. The team, all 5 guys be on the same page. He's out there communicating. He's calling out our coverages. And he's done a lot more off the ball on the perimeter than he's ever done in his career. You look at some of the things he's doing, tagging on ball screen rolls, being at the help line, what we call the white line, being over there, stunting, making plays that elite defenders make. He's seeing the whole floor. He's not just seeing his man. He's not just seeing the shot block attempt. He's seeing how he can help other guys off the ball, even in a non-statistical way. And that's a sign of someone who's growing maturity-wise on defense, and he's done that.
And how encouraging was it to see Olivier Combois play the way he did the other day and the impact that he made?
It was really encouraging because we need it. We need his physicality. We need his rebounding. We need his size and strength. Last year versus Kansas, he went in there and pretty quickly they went at him. And then late in the game, or, he had a pretty good possession late in the first half, I should say. He had a good possession where he kind of showed that physically he can do it. And he did that last game versus a really big front line, and as good of a front line as there is in this league in terms of Mississippi State. So to see him do that defensively, rebounding, finishing above the rim twice, it's what coach and the staff have really urged him to do and keep his focus on, and he needs to continue to do that. And we need it, and if he does that, he will really help our ball club on both sides of the ball.
Ben McKee and Gustavo.
Coach, Keon and Jaden made several winning plays the last 4 or 5 minutes of the game the other night. In a way, do you as coaches view that as a step that those two took in kind of their growth and development, just being able to make multiple winning plays in crunch time?
Yeah, sure. I think always, and it doesn't matter if you're a freshman or a senior, anytime you make winning plays in crunch time, winning free throws, winning offensive rebounds, defensive plays, that's huge. That's huge for the team confidence. It's huge for the individual confidence. So for two freshmen to do that, they were on the floor quite a bit late in the second half together, which is another step. And, we know we had some turnovers, and you're going to always go through some things as they develop, as you're talking about. But for them to make big plays down the stretch is really important for our team, because we know how talented they are. We know some of the things they can do on offense. So yeah, that's a big deal. That's a really big deal, and a good point that they can make crucial clutch plays that aren't just scoring. We know the game earlier that Keon went on to the free throw line late game and was 6 of 6 from the free throw line. So these kind of moments are really big for our team, and it was good to see two freshmen do it. And honestly, as exciting as anything was that Jaden was back on the floor last game, because we know we've missed him.
Coach, how do you evaluate your team's performance this month? In January, you guys are 4-3. You guys are closing here on Saturday. How do you evaluate your team's performance this month?
Need to be better. Obviously we don't, those two losses were difficult. And the loss to Alabama earlier in the month, with which would be considered this month. I'm sure you're referring to as that third loss, obviously. We know we need to be better. Alabama's proven to be one of the best teams in the country right now, and obviously the best team in the SEC at this moment. And so you look back at that game, and we've taken some things from it, and and we got rocked. We got rocked by Florida and Missouri. There's no other way to say it. We went up to Gainesville, and they played a great game. They really hurt us. They hurt us with a lot of different things. They spread us out. We had to make adjustments coming back. We came back, and in the Missouri game, they did the same thing, and they really played a lot faster, more physical brand of basketball than we did over those two games. We tried to get back to it versus Mississippi State. We got off to a really good start, and the whole point, Gustavo, is that we got to build on the game. We got to build on Tuesday night's game versus Mississippi State, and we got to continue to build on that and learn from those other three and build on the successes that we had versus Mississippi State going into Saturday and the rest of the month in February.
Jimmy Himes, Rob Lewis, and Mike Wilson.
Mike, who's your best perimeter defender right now?
Well, you probably have to say Yves Pons, because Yves can guard all different positions. And, it's funny you asked that, because as you asked that last question about him, that's another area he's gotten better at. It's never that he struggled with it, but being able to guard on the perimeter versus dynamic, smaller drivers is something that was always difficult for everybody. And he's been able to do that this year in switch situations, in situations where we put him on the opposing teams. Even if he's at the 4 spot, we'll put him on the opposing teams 2 and 3 and point guard just to defend that drive. So he's gotten better with it. But as a whole, Jimmy, it's an area we need to be a whole lot better. Our team staying in front of the ball, because that's where a lot of our breakdowns occur, is our on-ball defense. And, it's a give and take, because we want to pressure the ball, so we got to find that happy medium. But he's probably been the most consistent, but he hasn't been on it nearly as much as some of the other guys because he plays inside. I think Keon's done a nice job on the ball until recently. He knows he's got to get back to it. Same with Josiah James. He had really been solid on the ball until the Florida game. And then Florida-Missouri game, he'd be the first to say he really struggled to defend on the perimeter. The other guy that, people may not talk about, could be our overall best defender on the perimeter consistently is Santiago, because Santiago really has done a nice job disrupting other teams' perimeter play. He does it a little bit of a different way than a Eve or Keon would do, but he is just in and out on the ball. He attacks it. He's got quick feet. He knows how to read plays because he's very savvy. So Santiago's a guy, but collectively, Jimmy, we got to get a lot better guarding the ball, and we can't rely on one guy. We definitely can't rely on Eve's shot blocking to fix those mistakes when we do get blown by. So we got to continue to improve there.
Also with Vescovi, once again, he hit 2 clutch free throws for you. Even if he's not shooting well from the field, he has a way of doing that. Is there something about him when you see him go to the foul line that you are confident that he'll make, and that you know that he's confident in himself?
I think he's very confident in himself, in which I think as coaches, anytime you know your players are confident in themselves, you're going to be confident in them. And that's what we all want. We want all our guys to be like that. But Santiago, from the day he stepped on campus, has carried himself that way in many ways, but particularly on the free throw line. And when he goes up there to shoot free throws, that was an aberration when he missed 4 free throws that game. So absolutely, we have the utmost confidence in him. And I think when I did one of these a few weeks back, someone asked me the same question about Santiago getting up to the line, had a tough game, and he got up to the line to close it. And we said we wouldn't want anyone else up there. And so we have the ultimate confidence in him, and he has it in himself. And we were glad he was up there.
Coach, just personnel-wise, when you're scouting Kansas, what jumps out at you as, what concerns you about them? What do you have to take away and worry about?
Well, the first thing, they have a few different layers of that, but their inside play, their paint play with David McCormack. I mean, he's averaging 11.5 points a game and basically a little bit over 20 minutes on the season. Then he gets into conference play and it goes up to 15 points a game in 23 minutes. So his efficiency scoring the ball and his ability to create for others, because he's a really good passer. Doesn't get talked about nearly enough how good of a passer he is out of the post, whether it's double teams or him just finding guys on a perimeter. So once you get beyond that with his ability to score in the paint and rebound, now they have some really high percentage shooters. Agbaji is shooting 43%, Christian Brown, dynamic shooter. And then they have one of the most versatile players in the country on both sides of the ball in terms of Marcus Garrett. A very good driver, really good shooter, doesn't shoot it with the volume that the other 2 guys shoot it with, but he is a very, very good shooter, catch and shoot, and an elite defender that can guard multiple positions. And then a freshman that came out of nowhere, a redshirt freshman I'm blanking on his name at the moment, number
Jalen
10.
Wilson?
Yeah, he absolutely, is added a dynamic to their team that is just with the way he shoots the ball. He plays the 4 for them. He plays the 5 for them. So their talent really jumps out in terms of how they can score the ball. They do it in the paint. They shoot the ball efficiently from the perimeter. And one of our biggest problems is rebounding. And we know we gave up 15 offensive rebounds to Mississippi State the other night, and we're going to have to do a job keeping McCormack and their players off the offensive glass on Saturday.
Yeah, Mike, with all the things that Eve does defensively, does the fact that he really changes your offense get lost a little bit? And what's maybe the next step for him to round out more of his offense?
I don't know if it gets lost. He wasn't in rhythm. He wasn't making shots the way if he was sitting up here right now, he wouldn't say anything in terms of what was happening in the offense that was affecting him. He would say, hey, my play was affecting the offense. So I don't think it gets lost. I think it's just an enhancement when he's doing what Coach Barnes and the staff have seen him do. He does in practice. He's done it for the majority of the last 2 years. So what's he doing? He's shooting the ball with confidence. He's making shots from the perimeter. He's being more aggressive with his drives, as we talked about earlier. He's ready before he catches the ball, which is something Coach Barnes preaches to him and everybody on the team, to be ready to make a play. It doesn't matter if we're playing Kansas, Mississippi State, non-conference game. It makes no difference. If you're not ready to make a play on the catch, teams at this level are too good. And they're going to sit, and the defense is going to shrink and shrink and shrink. So when the ball sticks, it really makes a difference. So what's happened is Eve has become a little bit more decisive, a little bit more aggressive, and it's affected our offense because when we get 5 guys playing like that on the floor at once, we're better. Simple. I mean, it's not rocket science, and he's done that. He's found a little groove, found a little rhythm, and hopefully he stays in it.
Vince, Grant, and Jimmy.
Michael, a couple things on perimeter shooting. Do you guys track field goal percentage on good shots versus just field goal percentage in general or with bad shots?
No, we really don't. I'll be honest with you. We don't look at that. I mean, we have a pretty good feel. One thing we know about our guys is we don't think we're going to take bad shots. And so we don't spend a whole lot of time with that because we feel like for the most part, we're going to get good shots. Where we get in trouble sometimes, and we know this, sometimes we pass up some good shots a little bit earlier in the clock, and it leads to late shot clock possessions. And high quality shots are difficult to get late shot clock. They just are. I mean, your best chance late shot clock becomes a difficult shot or an offensive rebound. So, I think more than tracking the field goal percentage, Vince, is we got to understand it's a fine line between passing up a good shot early in the clock. Just because it's early doesn't mean it's not a good shot. But there's also the mentality that, hey, we don't want to come down every time. We just play defense for 25 seconds and then we come down and we take the first good shot we get. So it is a fine line, and ebb and flow of the game and the rhythm of the game is what's going to dictate that. But as long as we keep taking good shots, Vince, and as long as we keep getting shots under, in the parameters of our offense, we feel pretty good about it. And we feel like, just like we just talked about with Eve, they're going to start to drop. And ebb and flow of sports is normal, but we're going to get it.
And just a quick follow-up to that. Coach Barnes has even talked about some games that he feels like you guys have taken some good shots that just weren't falling. And it's never perfect. It's never as good as you want it to be. But in your experience in coaching, how much can a team's ability to make open shots improve throughout a season, especially if you aren't making them at a high clip early in the year?
Yeah, I think you can improve. I really do, Vince. We have good shooters on this team. And, do we have 4 or 5 guys that are 45, 50% three-point shooters? No, that's not the makeup of this team. But we have guys that have made it consistently at 35%, a couple guys at 40% or above. And, I love talking about sports in general. It doesn't matter if it's a baseball player. It doesn't matter if it's in sports of fighting and MMA or boxing. It doesn't matter if it's I said that for you, Vince, because I know you're an MMA guy. It don't matter if it's football and a quarterback. One good throw, one good swing by a golfer can change everything. And that's the beauty of sports. And you know what? That's why guys go in every day doing their daily vitamin, shooting the ball. I mean, if Eve Bonds had decided, you know what, I haven't shot the ball well in the first 4 or 5 games, I might as well hang it up. You don't know if he comes back the last 2 games and does it. So this is what makes sports great. And it is January 20-something. You lose time. You don't even know what day it is these days, but there's a lot of time, and we'll be in the gym. Our guys will be shooting, and that ball's going to go through the hoop. We feel very confident about it.
This is kind of off topic, but have you guys heard from the SEC about the Vanderbilt and South Carolina games? Will those try to be rescheduled, or you just kind of scratch those off the schedule, or you have any idea?
No, Grant, we haven't heard anything about it. Just kind of wait and see on that.
Thanks.
Mike, in regard to Jordan Springer, you talked about it was nice to get him back. What did you miss most about him not being on the court?
Yeah, it really is wild, Jimmy. One player, you think a team that we talk about our depth and, missing one player. Say, well, we got depth, but he's a unique player. You think about it, we've talked about it in here before. His shot selection is so good. He shoots the ball at such a high percentage from 3 because of his shot selection. So that was one. He spaces the floor in a different way because when he's out there, the other team is very concerned about him as a shooter because of his numbers. Number 2, he's such a controlled driver. So when we were struggling and we couldn't get to the paint, not having him, his ability to get to the paint, I think we've alluded to this before, that he almost plays the guard spot like a post player. He can get where he wants to get on the floor, under control. He's got a physicality and a power about him that he could shoot in the mid-range, shoot in the paint, deliver passes from the paint like he did at Texas A&M. So that combination right there, just his ability to keep the floor spaced as a high percentage three-point shooter, and then his ability to drive it under control as well as anyone we have on this team was a big piece. And, it was as big as missing anybody, those 3 games that we didn't have. Well, 2 games we didn't have him, and you look back to Alabama, the other game we lost, he sprained his ankle that game, and we didn't have him for the majority of that game. So he brings a very unique style of play to our team. Again, like a post player that plays the guard spot with what he can do once he gets the ball to the paint, and then just depth on defense. It's hard to play the way we want to play on defense when we can't go into our bench. And having him playing Olivier the other night, getting Ticket going, because Ticket's really doing a good job right now, and he's getting close. That allows us to play defense the way we want to. And we're a team. We need everybody. We're not a team that can rely on one player on either side of the ball, and we need everybody. So when we got our full allotment of players, and outside of injuries and things like that, we're a much better ball club.
You also mentioned how one shot or one swing can change the flow. What does one win do, beating Mississippi State?
We'll see. We're getting back in. We get back in. It seems like losses can affect you more than wins can, especially when you take 2 the way we did versus Florida and Missouri. But we knew getting off to a good start versus Mississippi State was really big because, again, sports. This is what happens. We took 2 on the chin pretty hard, and we were staggered a little bit, and we had to answer. We came back. And we got off to a good start versus Mississippi State, and then the game really turned into a possession game, and I think that was good for us. It was good to have a possession game after 2 games where we really got beat, handily. So to come back and be able to do that, we get back in film today, we get back in practice today, and obviously just really pleased that we were able to find a way to win, and you hope to build on that momentum. But it's like you said, you just got to keep building. And I said this on the radio earlier, Jimmy. You could come into film today. You probably won't know if we won or lost. You probably would be in film and wondering. You could come into a game when we've won by 20 or more, and you still might not be 100% sure. Did they really win that game? Because we're going to, Coach Barnes, from the day he's got here 6 years ago, it is going to be about this. Just get better today. Win, lose, it doesn't matter the result. Get better the next day, be better for the next game, be better for the next practice. And that's the honest truth. That's the program culture, DNA that he has. We're going to try and do that and just be better for today, tomorrow, leading into Saturday. And you see where the results take you. You see where that process takes you.
Quick sidebar going back to Vince's question about shot selection. There's a new analytics site that popped up last year in 2020 called shotquality.com. And I think a lot of you would be interested to take a look at some of the data that's there. Some of Tennessee's team numbers this year are pretty impressive. We'll go next to Ben McKee, then Vince.
Coach, John Fulkerson isn't having the season that I imagine he envisioned, or at least he's been in a slump here lately to the untrained eye. Have you all seen maybe signs in the Missouri game or the Mississippi State game, or just this week in practice that maybe he can bust out of that slump?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the biggest signs was that last tip he had in the Mississippi State game to get us that offensive rebound. Because when John Fulkerson's at his best, he's not just standing in one place with the ball in his hand and wheeling and dealing and scoring. He's obviously a skilled post scorer, and he can do things like that. But he's at his best when he's using his motor, his activity, his speed, his ability to get extra possessions on offense, tip outs like he did. That's a play that didn't get talked about a whole lot. That's as big a play as any when he tipped that last shot out and Santiago got the offensive rebound and they had to foul Santiago to put him on the free throw line. And you go back to the Kansas game last year and you look at some of the extra possessions he got sprinting in from the 3-point line, saving the ball. That's when he's at his best. And so, you know what? Yeah, if we're going to just be literal about it, that last play in the Mississippi State game, that was big. And he had a couple of them in that game because they're a dynamic front line, Mississippi State, and he had to find different ways. If he's going to sit there and let guys that outweigh him by 40 or 50 pounds always lean on him, bang on him, then he won't be able to do that. But when he's moving around and he's active and he's high energy and he's tipping the ball and he's flying around, that's when John's at his best. And we absolutely know he can get back to that. And we're challenging him to get back to that. And most importantly, he wants to get back to that. So we're going to continue with that today. And that's what we need him to do down the stretch in January and February.
Mike, you talked about Jaden's ability to drive to the basket, and Coach Barnes has talked about that a number of times, how you guys keep trying to get the guards to drive to the basket and get in the paint more. Why do you think there's been that reluctance for your guards to do that, as important as that aspect is?
Vince, I don't know if it's a reluctance to do it. I think, defense has a lot to do with it. The teams play us. They know we want to play inside out. They do. They know we want to get the ball in the paint, whether it's to John, whether it's posting our guards, whether it's Eve. They know we want to play inside out. So teams do have a tendency sometimes to back off, stay in gaps, sag a little bit, use a little bit of switching defense to take away some of the alleys to drive the ball. So a lot of it is the defense, but people maybe wouldn't talk about driving the ball as our guards posting up, but that's one way coach does it. Coach says, well, if we can't drive the ball because the defense we're going to post our guards. And if you look at it in our 6 years here, there's never been a time that we've posted more guards than we have this year between Keon, Jaden, Josiah. We've even posted VJ this year. So if Eve is at the 3, he will post up, obviously, even though he hasn't been there much this year. So I don't believe it's a reluctance, but then the flip side of it is this. Turnovers, 2 of the last 3 games have been a problem, Florida and Missouri. Turnovers were a problem. So what happens when you start turning the ball over? Yeah, maybe that creeps in a little bit because, you don't want to over dribble and you're trying to move the ball. You're trying to find a way to shift the defense side to side to create an alley to drive, to create a gap to drive. So, I think it all goes hand in hand, but you give the defense credit. They're playing. They know we want to get the ball downhill. They know we want to get the ball in the paint, and we just got to be stronger doing it. And that's why missing Jaden was a big deal because he's one of those guys. He can drive through contact. There's drivers with speed, and then there's drivers that know how to drive through contact and can handle that. He's one of the guys that knows how to handle that contact, and that's what makes him a really good player.
And one quick follow-up, Jaden may be the answer to this, but you guys a couple of years ago used to be able to go to Grant Williams or Schofield or even Lamonte Turner for a big basket when you'd go through a couple of minute stretch without any offense, without any points, and seemingly you can just go get a bucket to snap out of that and get on a roll. Doesn't seem like you guys have that ability this year with longer stretches. How important is that, and is that something you guys look at also?
Yeah, sure. No, we definitely look at it. I think every coach in America will look at that and say, hey, who can we go to when we're struggling? And it's by committee right now. And there's still a lot of basketball still left to be played. There's still guys that are going towards and hopefully hitting the point where they're in a really good place where we can have more confidence in them to do that. But if you look at it this year, coach has called John Fulkerson's number, and he's delivered when we've needed him to. We've been in some close games. You go back to Colorado and Cincinnati early, those were close ball games. But Arkansas was a close ball game. Mississippi State was a close ball game. So John's delivered. Eve delivered the other night. I mean, we were in a little bit of a stretch, and coach went to him and called his number back-to-back times, and he delivered. The freshmen have delivered. He's called Jaden's number late. He's called Keon's number late to drive the ball and go create. So it may not be one person all season, but you know what, Vince, if we find a way to get 3 or 4 guys where we have confidence in them, they have confidence in themselves to do it, it almost becomes more difficult to guard when you have 3 or 4 guys because then the defense can't key in on anyone. We just got to find that. We just got to get to that point, and right now we're still building.
All right, we'll take last call for 1 or 2 remaining questions. We'll finish up with Ben McKee.
The last one I've got, I promise. Santiago has a tendency when he drives to the basket to maybe leave his feet, and he maybe gets stuck in being indecisive and not knowing really what to do when he leaves his feet. What is your message to him kind of when you all are reviewing that with him? And I imagine this is a tendency that he had picked up growing up playing overseas. So how do you kind of maybe teach him out of that, I guess?
It's okay to leave your feet to pass. It's not okay to leave your feet to make a decision. And you know what? So that's about as simple as that. So it's not an easy habit to break, but I mean, jump passes are a part of this game. You watch basketball every night, people are going to jump to pass the ball. There's nobody just keeps their feet on the ground all the time when they pass, especially off of a drive. But you can't drive and leave your feet to make a decision. That's where indecision happens. That's where teams can create turnovers and problems start to snowball there. So that's just a habit he's got to get out of. But you know what? We want him to drive the ball. He's such a dynamic passer when he finds guys in those scenarios. So it's, yeah, you know, you have to balance that. You don't want to go too hard one way or the other, but simply that's what we tell him. It's okay to leave your feet to pass, but you can't leave your feet just to make a decision.
All right, Coach, thank you.